This is a Defocus Media production.
Audio Jungle.
What's up, everyone? It's your favorite optometrist, Dr. Darryl Glover.
And I'm Dr. Jennifer Lyerly, resident optometry nerd.
And welcome to Defocus Media, optometry's #1 podcast, where we discuss the hottest topics, latest technology, eyewear, practice management, and more. So sit back, relax, and defocus. What's up, everyone? It's your favorite optometrist, Dr. Darryl Glover. Happy Monday. Today I am super excited because we get to talk about something that's very close to my heart, something that I love. The name of this podcast today is Teamwork Makes the Dream Work. Let me repeat that one more time. Teamwork makes the dream work. And I'm a firm believer of that. And all the guests on the call today are experts in making that dream work because they believe strongly and heavily in teamwork. Today, I get to co-host this show with an amazing star in eye care, an amazing star in myopia. Friends and family, I'd like to welcome my co-host, Dr. Aamena Kazmi. How are you doing today, Dr. Kazmi?
Hey, Dr. Darryl. Thanks for having me. We're really looking forward to it. I am so excited to co-host the next few podcasts on myopia and my sight lenses and everything in between with you. But this topic in specific is really near and dear to me. I think it's a great place for us to start, and I'm so excited to hear about our friends here with us today, Kayla and Dr. Coan.
Yeah, so let's introduce the dream team. Kayla, Dr. Coan, if you don't mind coming on and just give us a little overview background of where you're from and maybe kind of walk us through your story in eye care. Let's start with you, Dr. Coan, if you don't mind telling us how you got into eye care, how long you've been doing it, where you practice, and then Kayla, if you don't mind coming in as well.
Yeah, so I'm that myope. I was that kid getting worse and worse every year. My glasses were getting thicker. So the greatest invention is contact lenses, but there was no way to control it at the time. So now there are ways to do it. So that's why I'm so passionate about it. So I'm very myopic. My kids are myopic. And that's why I got into it. So I graduated from the New England College of Optometry a while ago. So, a couple of decades. But I'm in private practice in Orlando with my husband. And also I have another associate. So we've been here for 20 years. And Kayla is my lead tech, and I could not do this without her.
Yeah. So I got into eye care in 2013. I was born and raised in St. Petersburg, and that's where I started. So it was a small practice where I was able to get a lot of skills because you're very hands-on in a small practice. And I moved over to Orlando in 2019, where I met Dr. Chung. And I have just continued my education, getting my CPOA, and gaining knowledge with myopia control and a few other things like dry eyes and such. So it's just been awesome. It's funny today. We went bowling, and we definitely are working on it a little bit. But eye care has taken over our lives. If we missed a pin, we were blaming it on our monovision contacts, or
That was me. I was good at rolling it.
So it's just, we are 100% eye care for sure.
I love it. And I know we're going to have a lot of great conversation, a lot of great dialogue, because you've already talked about how much of a team you are. And then Dr. Coan, you even mentioned that your husband's a part of the team. So you really got to make sure that dream works with your involved family as well. But before we jump into the podcast, before we jump into this great and amazing content this evening, Dr. Kazmi, you got to share your background as well. You're no stranger to the podcast. You've been on here before, but where do you practice? Give us a little bit of background of who you are, and let the world know, because you're an amazing co-host, and I can't wait to tackle this podcast series with you and this partnership that we have with CooperVision.
Absolutely. So I actually graduated from the University of Houston College of Optometry in 2015. I currently practice in Houston, Texas, so I did not stray away at a practice called Bel Air Family Eye Care. It is a very strong myopia management practice. My passion for myopia is very much the same as yours, Dr. Coan. I am a -650. I was a little fourth grade myope and just exchanged my glasses out for a higher power each year with no means of controlling it. So when I first learned about it in optometry school, it immediately piqued my interest and set me looking for a practice that was just as passionate as I am about it. And that's how I landed at Bel Air Family Eye Care.
Awesome. Well, let's get this party started. I don't know if you ladies are ready, but I'm definitely ready. I think the best way to get started is to really define what teamwork is. So I would love to maybe get everyone's opinion on, what teamwork is, or, what it takes, what characteristics you need in order for teamwork to take place. Who would like to go first?
So teamwork is awesome. Dr. Chung and I, as soon as we get a myopic patient in there, she grabs the chart, she looks at me like she's Superwoman, and she's like, "You ready?" It's so funny. And then I'm chasing after her, and we're running into the room, and we're just getting involved and excited with the patients. It's just a really fun experience. So when we're in the room together, going into the myopia, we are working on finding their prescription, and we start talking to the parents. Dr. Chung automatically goes into talking to the parent. I'm interacting with the child. They're still talking about myopia and what is it, and I'm already throwing a contact lens on the child. So we're definitely tag teaming the whole thing the whole way through.
Yeah, we do a lot of training in our practice. So when I first introduced it, we had these weekly meetings, and we did all these little quizzes. So I would present, for about 20 minutes or so, and for a month approximately. And then we did some Kahoot quizzes and some fun things, and say, let's try to remember all our data, because we're presenting it to patients. So we did that, and so it's not just the text that were involved; it's the person who's answering the phone call too. Mm-hmm. So if we're calling, they're like, "Oh, I heard you guys do ortho-K," and it's like, so if they say, "What's that?" It's really important they understand that. Exactly. So they understand it. When the front desk, they come in, they're like, "Oh, I see you're here for contact lenses. We're going to help manage your child so the prescription doesn't get worse." Then it goes over to the technician, like Kayla says. We tag team a lot. We don't even really speak to each other. It's like a great dance we do. Yeah. And then after the technicians, they come out, the optical, they come out. This is our optical actually. And the opticians, they go over the prices with the Brilliant Futures program, how you can use it towards insurance. So they're also talking about it too and getting excited. Yeah. So everyone is very involved from the very beginning, from the phone call to the very end, and all the return visits.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And when I hear this, 3 things pop to mind. Number one, when it comes to teamwork in your office, just to describe it, it's communication, right? You got to have that communication. Both of you had mentioned that. You were talking about talking with your eyes. You were having conversation, chasing each other. It's all about that communication, right? But then also you have to be able to comprehend. You have to understand. You mentioned quizzing, right? Quizzes that take place in your office so your team members can have that knowledge to be able to educate and to be able to communicate. And the one thing that I love that you really touched on, because you say you do this every single day, every single patient, is that consistency. So for me, when I hear teamwork and I hear it in your office, I hear that you communicate well. I hear that the team members comprehend, they understand well, and that they're very consistent every single day when it comes to creating that teamwork in the office. Dr. Kazmi, what are you hearing? What's your definition?
Oh, yeah, I'm absolutely hearing the same exact things. You touched on some of the things that I think are so important. And one is the whole team being educated on it, from the front desk to the opticians to the technicians. A lot of times patients, when they're coming into the office or calling in, it's still their first interaction with the concept of myopia management. So they don't know a whole lot about it, or they're looking for more information. And if they're hearing the same consistent, cohesive message from everyone throughout the office, that's going to help them better understand and comprehend what we're trying to present to them. The first time they hear it, it's a lot. And so if they're hearing it throughout their experience in the office at that one visit, they're comprehending it differently each time. It's initiating questions, it's creating drive for them, it's motivating them, it's exciting them. So I think that's so huge what you just said. The second thing that you mentioned to me is the energy that you go into the exam room with, because we want to keep this a cheerful experience for them. It's something exciting, and it's something very neat that we can initiate something to help slow down their child's progression when we couldn't do that for our own generation when we were growing up. So if you keep this as a positive thing, a cheerful, high energy experience, they're more likely to have confidence in it and buy into it. And ultimately, it's for the benefit of their child. We're prescribing something. We're not recommending. We're prescribing something that's going to benefit them, and we don't want to do it in a scary way. So if the team approaches it in the same manner with each patient, you're going to get more comfortable with it, and that's going to make you more successful with it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I want to add to, Kayla, she's kind of my right-hand person. So you have to have also that person in charge. So she's kind of the lead. And if I run into an issue, she comes in. She's actually training our other techs to be more proficient and confident in the way they present things, because she's not always available, right? So if she's running around helping my other doctors, I try to hog her as much as I can, right? And what I do is I call some of the other techs, and they're slowly learning and they're gaining confidence. So they're getting better and better at it too. So it's really important you choose that lead tech.
Absolutely. And having the lead tech is so helpful too, because, it is a high dollar buy-in for the parents. And so it's unapologetically high though, because there's a level of expertise associated with it. There's more testing associated with it, more staff time, doctor time, everything. So it's worth the price. But if you have somebody that spearheads that, a point of contact for the patients, so that they get that concierge type service that we're promising that they're going to get, especially with their quarterly visits, having that consistency where they're interacting with the same people, that being, the myopia champion of the practice and the doctor, it really helps the whole process feel a lot more smooth and efficient.
Wow, I love all of this, and I really want to jump into myopia control, right? I want to be able to take this teamwork concept and I want to apply this to myopia control, and I want all the listeners that are out there that are doing this and the ones that are thinking about doing this to understand the importance of teamwork. And I think once we're able to understand this in our practice, it'll be easier to roll this out. So let's kind of get into the weeds of this. Let's break down how teamwork works with myopia control. And I would really love to just maybe get some pearls in regards to not only just the office communication, but also the patient communication. Because when I look at team, yes, I look at in the office internally, but I also look at that external partnership, that external team member, and that's the patient. So I'd love to touch on parent communication as well. But also I like to just talk about, how to explain my site. You touched on it briefly, but let's get into the nitty gritty of it. What kind of conversation, what kind of tools, what kind of resources, what type of visuals, what are you doing to really create that team environment? And then lastly, I'd love to really get into the fees, right? At the end of the day, we want to help our patients, but we also have to take care of our families, and we have to make sure that we have a healthy and thriving practice. So let's maybe take it from the top. Let's talk about the parent communication. When it comes to teamwork, what does that look like in your practice when it comes to working with that parent that's sitting across you? How does that take off? How does that start? Dream Team, why don't you take the lead on this one here?
Yeah, so as soon as we are going into an exam, I start off at an autorefractor, right? And I instantly see there's a -2 or any type of minus, and I'm already like, yes. So then I start digging into, so what hobbies do you have? I'm asking the parents, what are your prescriptions? And I'm just finding all this information that is going to allow me to ease my way into it. So it's planting seeds, gathering information. And when we then are moving on into the room, the doctor has seen the patient. I really want to express to the parent, especially if they might not be myopic, you can do the simulator, you can do trial lenses and show them what their child is seeing and how blurry it is. And I really am just really big on putting contacts on, and I worry about the price later. Let's first experience this awesome technology and see what the benefits are. And it's really, really hard to say no to a smiling child. So when we get those lenses on, a couple of techs will all kind of watch each other take the child outside and see the edges on the leaves for the first time, and just really experience the world differently with contact lenses while being controlled. So it's just really cool to have that experience.
Yeah, so our techs, again, we have a series of questions like you mentioned, Kayla. Are the parents nearsighted? How nearsighted are they? When did they begin? The behavioral things. So when she talked about the simulator, I just kind of wanted to clear that up. So there's something on the CooperVision website where you can actually go and show how blurry a patient is. Because some parents are actually plano and then one parent is nearsighted, so they don't really get that. Mm-hmm. Or so what she also talked about was the trial lenses. Let's say they're a -3. They have no idea what a -3 is, but when you put a +3 in front of the parent, they're like, oh my God, you're seeing that blurry. So then they get to feel like, whoa, okay, this is actually pretty serious. So it really changes their mindset. So those are some of the things we do. Sometimes you get those engineers and men, they are on it. They're like, I know this is a multifocal, how does this work? So, but, generally for most patients, we use layman's terms, say, well, what it does, there's some different rings. One ring helps correct the vision and the other one places the image in the front. So what it does, the eye kind of follows, that image where it's clearest. So it doesn't want to elongate. So that's kind of one of the ways we explain what MySight is. And I think, Kayla, you also go into some brochures and stuff, which you can show too.
Yeah, absolutely. So they have given us so many different tools. So on there, you can kind of see the different rings that Dr. Chung was just talking about, what a non-myopic eye looks like versus a myopic eye. And when you're not just speaking words to me, but you're showing me and allowing me to visualize what the child is going through or what they might even be going through, it just makes it so much easier to talk about it.
Yeah, and at the end, when they do sign up, and I have to say we have a pretty high capture rate, we give them this fun box here, just like, it has a bunch of stuff in it with a bag and a mirror and stuff like that. So we really make it fun for them, and we take pictures, and they want to be on social media too.
Yeah.
So we do all sorts of things to communicate with them on that too. A lot of parents actually fear. They're like, well, we've actually fit a 6-year-old last week.
Yes.
And they're like a -2, and they're saying, well, I don't know if they're old enough. So I mentioned to them, there's clinical studies that show that actually younger kids do better than older kids and teenagers, because we know teenagers, they don't really listen. So the younger kids, we know that they actually, they will listen to their parents, they will follow instructions, the parents are there. So we make them feel comfortable with that too. And we know also, with the other studies like the Achieve study, it shows that the patients will actually have better their self-esteem, and they'd actually do better in sports too. So we tell them that. So it's not just about myopia management, but it's also giving them that visual freedom and having them feel better about themselves. So that's how we communicate all the positives, about, Ortho-K and brilliant features and MySight and even atropine. Actually, we're looking forward to glasses coming in soon to the US also.
Yeah, and what you said about patients or parents being a little bit nervous about their child being age appropriate, the beautiful thing about the MySight lenses is that it's an FDA approved lens, and it was tested in 7 to 12-year-olds. So most of the time their child is in that age group and you're prescribing it, and it's already been shown to be safe and effective. So that in itself is very strong, and it's a very empowering statement to make patients and their parents feel more comfortable with it.
Yeah, I love everything that everyone's touched on this evening so far, and something, Kayla, that you really said that just really, it got me super excited over here, and it was the phrase or the term planting seeds, right? That is so powerful, and you express that, whether they're farsighted or nearsighted, you're still planting that seed because you don't know what that eye may do down the road, right? So it's good to always put it out there and get them in the habit of maybe communicating, spending more time outdoors, holding things a little further, taking breaks, things like that. But when you plant that seed, it really starts to get them to start to change their behavior so they don't run into that profile of someone that's extremely nearsighted down the road. So I really love that. I also love Dr. Coan, when you mentioned layman terms, right? Sometimes as optometrists, we can really be geeky, right? We can nerd out and we can start talking about axial length and this, that, the third.
Focus. Yeah.
Focus. They don't care about that. They want to know, how is this going to impact them throughout the day? How is this going to impact them down the road? And I think when you're able to make that happen, that really changes the game. And the last thing that I really love is the visuals. I'm a visual learner, right? Sometimes I think we need to sit back and position ourselves as patients, as a consumer. How do you learn things? How do you take in things? How do you consume information? And for me, I'm a visual learner. So if you actually show me a picture of what a nearsighted eye looks like, and I can see on there, higher risk of retinal detachment, get cataracts a little earlier, all these things, then it starts to stick with me. So I think that's important to be able to, number one, understand that patient that's in front of you and realize that everyone consumes information differently. And it's up to us as the eye care professionals, as the healthcare professionals, to really make sure that we're communicating with the patient in their language.
Yeah, real quick about retinal detachment. I would actually stay away from certain terms because I actually did see that
Oh,
one.
let's talk about this. I like that because it's funny you mentioned that. I called one of my colleagues the other day because I don't have a high following in regards to children. All my parents that follow me or that come to see me, they're around my age. So all their kids are like 2 and younger. So I know it's going to hit me 3 or 5 years. So now I'm planting the seed, but I am curious. What do you say? Do you talk about cataracts? Do you talk about glaucoma? Do you talk about retinal detachments? Do you have that conversation with the kid in the room, or do you send them out? Let's talk about that dialogue, because this is very important, because folks that have never done this, they don't know what to do. They're just going in it blindly, and they want to make sure that they're saying the right thing and have the right dialogue. So I'd love to open up the floor to discussion for that.
Yeah, so I said I went over, okay, high risk for cataracts, glaucoma, retinal detachment, and the parent was like, oh my God, you are scaring me, and how dare you say that in front of my kid? I was taken aback. So what I say now is that, it can cause certain eye diseases. And if the parent actually had a retinal attachment, then you'd bring it up. Yes, as you know, it can cause a retinal attachment. So we're very careful on what we say overall. But again, if you get an engineer, they want to know everything. We sometimes mention it. So it depends on who you're talking to. But I would definitely avoid saying, I would just say it causes certain eye diseases. You're more prone to more eye disease, and I leave it at that. If they ask, well, which ones, then you could bring it up. But I don't think any parent has actually asked us which ones. So
when I was first getting started, I had a really bad one. In my brain, it made so much sense because, the eye is stretching and it's getting thinned out. So I compared it to blowing up a balloon and the color gets thinner and thinner. And she said, so my child's eye is going to pop. So I never said that again afterwards. So it's definitely, I was trying to use an analogy, but it was not a good one.
Yeah, so I would say try to avoid those things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think me too. I don't really say a whole long list of things that can happen. I keep it pretty vague. Again, saying the eye diseases that can manifest later on in adulthood. I always throw in LASIK candidacy because some reason people really perk up when they think that LASIK might not be an option in the future. So that's a good one to kind of throw in and keep the energy positive. And I usually wait until somebody asks me, what eye diseases are you talking about? And every now and then I will throw in like a vision threatening eye disease, something that's a little bit more drives home the motivation to do it, but I won't have the whole list of things. I did like what you said, Dr. Glover, about having a visual aid that might just be showing the patient, like this is a nearsighted eye versus a plano eye. And then maybe in the periphery of that aid, it lists off all the other things that could be caused if we don't take action to slow progression, because then they're seeing it on their own, but we're not necessarily saying it in front of the child, which I think that's the real thing, is that parents don't like that you're saying certain things in front of their kid that could be scary or worrisome. So that was a nice thing that you said, that I'm going to go back and look at my visual aids and see if it even has those listed on there. If not, I'm going to add it.
Yeah, and that's the whole point of this podcast and this conversation, right? Everyone on this call outside of me are experts in myopia control. I'm soaking up game. I'm taking notes. I got a whole list of notes here in regards to things
I
that
think you know quite a bit, but just start with the LASIK. We do mention things like, okay, if you want to be in the military, you may want to definitely have a lower prescription to, emergency personnel. So all of those things too, you definitely want to try and keep your prescription down as much as possible, besides having eye diseases too. So all those things we do actually mention.
Yeah, we bring it into a lifestyle, and like you said, a lifestyle, and then how they take to themselves. The kids are on social media, so how do they present themselves and their confidence as well?
That's a big one. Confidence, right? What type of conversation are you having in your exam rooms with that? Because I know there are some parents that come in and they're extremely nearsighted and they take their glasses off. Of course, they can just see here, and they just think about that, and they think about their kids, and they don't want their kids to go through or experience that. So is that a buzzword or a trigger word in the exam room with parents? Are you hearing more of that?
Yeah, because with all the mental health issues going on with COVID and things like that, I that's when I bring up the Achieve study. I said, there's better self-esteem overall. They play better in sports. You bring that up all the time too. So that's really key, because like I mentioned before, it's about myopia management, but also giving them visual freedom from glasses too. So it's really important. I mean, mental health is a huge issue right now overall. And I think when we say that, just even with just regular contact lenses, not even myopia management, we've had a lot of patients convert. They come here for glasses and they're converting over to contact lenses because they know it's going to help their teenager, especially, overall at school.
Now, are you seeing that more in boys or girls, or is it kind of 50-50 for the most part?
I think it's definitely more girls, but the boys are pretty active in sports too.
Right.
But the boys are harder to teach to put contact lenses on.
They are harder, but I do think that in general, I've been feeling, and maybe it's just these last few months, but most of the time when I tell patients that they need glasses and it's their first time, I've been getting reactions of sadness and kids crying in my chair when, I don't get the whole excited to get glasses thing anymore. I feel like more people are upset about it and not wanting to wear glasses. And another thing is, like you said, it's not just for myopia management. People are converting to contacts much earlier, much more frequently now for all scripts. So a lot of my patients have classmates that already wear contacts. And so before, when it was, hey, my friend wears glasses, I want to have glasses too, there's people that are saying, hey, my friend has contacts, I want to wear contacts too. Or my friend told me that they have contacts that they sleep in and it helps them see better in the morning. Tell me more about that. So it's becoming a lot more common. And because of that, people are more excited to be in contacts at a younger age.
Awesome. So I want to switch gears. I mean, right now we understand how to communicate with that parent. We know to look for certain buzzwords, trigger words. We know not to say certain things. We know to use visual aids. We know to communicate clearly, and we know to plant seeds. But when it comes down to the come down of explaining how my site works, you got to give me some rules. You got to give me some tips. You got to give me some pearls, because you look at that lens and it looks pretty complex. How do we take such a complex device and dumb it down so that the patient can truly understand it? If you don't mind sharing a little bit of what you say in the exam lane, from a tech perspective to OD perspective, I'd love to get some insight in regards to that.
So you really have to read the room. Every patient is going to be different. You're going to have the patient that comes in and they are myopic, they're wearing glasses, and they completely understand and they don't want their child to go through it, and they just are ready. You don't even have to say much. And then you're going to go into the engineers. So you're going to have to be ready for the whole scale. When it comes down to it, I am strongly into the literature and the pictures. That's the only way that I'm able to, as a tech, really get that point across. If I have to use the picture showing the defocusing and explaining how the eye is going to be able to look at different focal points and relax and not be chasing it, all the way down to we're going to control it. We're going to monitor it, make sure they're not growing. It's just different spectrums.
Yeah, I love that you said that. You got to read the room, because the amount of information that you put out there is really dependent on the energy that you're getting back. So I personally keep my explanation of what my site does very simple. And then from there, based off of the questions I'm getting, I'll add more detail as the conversation is going on. So I really just say that a MySight contact lens is a little bit different. The optics of the design of the lens is different. Instead of just having one prescription that will help your child see clearly, it has a dual component that will help your child see clearly and then also slow down the rate of growth. I always start my conversation off by emphasizing that your child's eyes are healthy, but I am seeing a new onset of myopia or nearsightedness, or some progression in their myopia or nearsightedness, whichever it may be. But have no fear, because when you and I were growing up, we didn't have options to keep this from happening at such a fast rate. I make it very relatable. And then I make it exciting by saying now there's a lot of different options that we have to choose from to help slow down the rate of change. And then from there, as I'm describing each option, I keep it very simple. And then based off of the questions or the level of interest, I'll go into more and more detail as needed.
Yeah, so I do something very similar as I discussed before. We show this card here where it goes over, it slows down the progression of nearsightedness of 59% in prescription and 52% in the lengthening of the eye. So just having the data itself and saying it's the only FDA approved contact lens to manage myopia in the US is huge. The fact that the parents are used to contact lenses themselves, some of them are already wearing daily disposable. It's a really easy transition overall too for them. It's also comfortable. So I go over kind of the pros and cons of both. We look at, like Kayla said, we figure out their lifestyle. Are they swimmers? Maybe we do ortho-K. If they're swimming a lot. If they're not, then we mention, my site, maybe they have a lot of astigmatism, then we mention ortho-Ks. But it's really what they're doing. Maybe they're playing a lot of sports. We tell them, if you have my site lenses, you'll have a ton of lenses. You'll always have a backup. What if you forgot to sleep in your lenses too? So that's an issue. Then that day your vision will be blurry. So we say, with my site, you just put it on every day. So there's a lot of pros and cons. And one thing we do, because a lot of times some parents, I don't know why they ask their kids, do you want to do this? And I'm like, why are you asking them? But yeah, we ask them too. But at the same time, it's like, you're the parent. You should be talking to your kid, hey, let's try this. So what Kayla and I do, we say, well, your child doesn't really understand what a contact lens is. I said, it's just a soft, squishy little material. It's really comfortable. So do you mind if we put it on your child today? So Kayla knows that's the cue for go get the contacts. And the parent says yes, and she puts it on. And I'm still talking to the parent. And as she's putting it on, I kind of distract the parent because we don't want them seeing, they're having issues or whatever. And that's when she mentioned, once it's on, they're looking around the room. And I said, okay, they're doing great. But like we said, we bring them out to the optical where they can see it all in the wide open area. And then that's when they see the smile. And I could tell you 90% of the time, they end up signing up that day. They don't even think about it. It's like the child is so happy. So that's how our capture rate is pretty high overall. They don't even go home and think about it, or they're calling their spouse, hey, hon, they're doing really well. I think we should do this. and they do it. So
it's rare if we have to really dig into how it works.
Yeah.
Because we're bringing it into the lifestyle. We're bringing it into excitement, visual needs. And it's very rare if we have to go further into it. And then also, even if you do need to go further into it, or you have a parent that is just on the edge, or they're not really understanding it, you plant a seed. You've spoken about it, and maybe they come back in 6 months, they come back in a year, and now we've seen they grow by 50. They grew a couple more in their prescription, and now we have the proof as well. So there's just planting seeds and just kind of keeping it all over.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm just excited that just hearing you two have this communication. You two, it's just like you're almost like best friends, right? Like this is truly teamwork.
We are.
Hey, I'm a firm believer that your technician, like my goal is to always train my technicians to know everything that I know. The only difference between my technicians and myself is that I have an OD degree. But my technicians, some of them want to go to optometry school to become an optometrist. So at some point in time, they'll have that OD degree. But I think it's very important to really have that teamwork, to really have that communication, to really have that collaboration in order to really help that patient live their best life and have all the tools and resources to be successful. Now, I really want to jump into, setting up fees, but I feel like Dr. Kazmi has something that she wanted to add to this previous conversation. I saw you taking notes over there. Was there something that you wanted to add?
Two things that you said that I really liked and wanted to touch on. One is back to the planting seeds thing. That's the theme of this show. I really think teamwork makes the dream work when planting seeds. We need to
I love it.
With planting the seeds, that's a huge thing, because no matter how good you are at this discussion and how much of a point you make, there's some families that are just not going to do it that day. And if you set up a recall for them to come back in 6 months or 3 months, whatever, something sooner than a year, and you repeat certain measurements and you end up finding progression, that makes the buy-in so much more powerful. And yeah, they lost like 0.5 diopters, but there's still a lot of time to make an effective change. So planting the seed is huge, but making that recall appointment before they leave to make sure they do come back in instead of at their annual visit when they're really going to start remembering it's time to come in is the thing that makes the bigger impact. So we usually always do either a 3 or 6 month follow-up, depending on what we think the patient's progression rate is or how they seem to be trending. The other thing about planting seeds is with you, Dr. Darryl, you said you don't have a lot of kids at this, a lot of patients at this age range yet, but tell your myopic patients that are adults, you know, they're having kids or they might have a niece or a nephew that they feel like could be myopic because their sibling is myopic. And if you're planting that seed now, you're going to start getting them in the door sooner or later, and it's not going to be their first time hearing about the progression options. So they might come in ready to go. So that was also really a point that I wanted to touch on. And then the last thing you said, and it's really funny because I've had the same thoughts before, is when they ask their child, like, do you want to do this? Because you're like, hello, mom and dad, make the good decision for them. But at the same time, coming back to the teamwork topic of it, you know, the child really does have to buy into wearing contact lenses if they're going to be open and motivated to try it and continue on with it at home. So, I mean, if you can get them excited about it by demonstrating to them what their vision could be like or engaging them in the conversation a little bit, I do think it helps with the success once they go back home.
Yeah, it's like you mentioned, you know, tell the grandparents about it. Just tell everyone about it because you never know who they know. They might know several friends. And the other thing too about having the team work together is that there are certain questions they would not ask me and they would ask Kayla and vice versa. So that's the other thing. Yeah. So that's why we actually take turns going in and out of the room and then we come in. But, you know, another way I did train Kayla was that she sat down with me at every consultation. At first I was like, I should have somebody do it. And then I was like, no, I should just do it because I'm really passionate about it. And, you know, she kind of took over the passion. Sometimes she's even more passionate about it. She's like, yes, I'm myope, right? Right. So, but she's learned with every question that a parent has and every comeback they had. And I had the answer for them, basically. Mm-hmm. So again, they may be more comfortable with certain things, even out in the optical or the front desk. They're like, okay, the tech said this and doctor said this. You know, and then, you know, in the optical, they're like, oh, yes, we know about little Johnny and he did great. So just sharing those stories with your staff too, all the accomplishments you've done with all the patients, with the team again, it's really, really key.
So let's jump into the $1 million question. I always like to have the $1 million questions on every show. And let's talk about how you set up your fees, right? Because we could talk about myopia all day, but if the doctor, the office manager, whoever's running the practice doesn't see how it's going to increase their bottom line, you know, they may not, you know, go this direction. And we all know that we need every optometrist, every eye care professional screaming from the top of their lungs that we need to do myopia control. Even if you don't do it, refer it to a colleague that may do it. But for those that may be jumping into it, or those that may be losing money because they're not understanding it, maybe we can walk through how you set up your fees, what you look like, you know, things of that nature, if you don't mind sharing.
Okay, so I mentioned to you that I've been doing this for a long time. Okay, I was actually involved in the Paragon studies to get the material approved for daytime wear. That's how old I am. But anyways, so what I've done in my practice is that I base it on time. And I know other doctors would say, and I've heard it before, oh, we set one price because we don't want to make one treatment sound like it's better than the other. But I decided, you know, throughout my 22 years of practice, I said, okay, I'm spending less time with a patient with atropine, or I'm spending more time on a patient with ortho-K, and, you know, in between time with brilliant features my site. So I've kind of adjusted those fees according to time. So that's how I've tiered it. I know other doctors have said, it's all the same. It doesn't matter what you choose, and this is it. So I think it's really do what's right for you. There's no right or wrong answer. But I think that works really well in our practice too, because, you know, we've even had 4 or 5-year-olds who are -1, and they're not able to put the contact lenses in yet. So what we do is say, okay, well, actually, for atropine, for the drops, off-label, you know, we can still manage myopia, but at least you're getting used to that. And then eventually we can put them into contact lenses. Mm-hmm. And then that fee is going to be a little bit different. So yeah, I believe, you know, it works well in our practice, but I know other practitioners say it's just the one price. I don't know what you do, Dr. Kazmi.
Are you, for your atropine, are you sending it to a compounding pharmacy, or are you supplying it through your office by ordering it through like a mail order system to the office?
I do not want to deal with any of those drugs. So I rather they get it direct from the pharmacy and they take care of it. So I just prescribe it to We use Imprimis actually. I know, and we use OSRX in the past.
Yeah. Because I know OSRX has the option where you could stock it at the office. So I was curious if you did that, but we actually don't do that ourselves either. We send it to local compounding pharmacies. So they are paying the pharmacy for the drop, and I make sure I share that with them. The pharmacy will have their set fees. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of X and Y. And then we actually charge less for our myopia management program when it's atropine only as well. When it's combination therapy for our faster progressors or higher myopes, if they're in Ortho-K or MiSight and we're adding atropine to it, it's usually, we don't add in a separate fee for the atropine portion of it. So it'll just be whatever the fee that they're paying for the lens option that they've chosen, and then still just getting the medication from the compounding pharmacy.
Wow. So I want to circle back to something that you just mentioned. It seemed like you're saying that some of this myopia management, this myopia control can coexist. So can MiSight and Ortho-K, are these two things that we can do together? And if so, if you don't mind talking to us about that, because this is new to me.
No, this is MiSight with atropine or Ortho-K with atropine.
Okay.
That's what the combinations we're talking about.
Right.
Yeah, so there have been a lot more studies coming out, and I know more studies with multifocal contact lenses and atropine, where it's synergistic. It has a definite and better outcome. But I think 2 years ago, there was one study done with Ortho-K and atropine, and it said it was like an 82% effectivity. So again, I think overall, just combining it I think it's going to be a better overall, I think. So I want to actually give you an example. I have two kids, right? My sons, they were 6 and 7 at the time, and my 6-year-old was a 0.5. 6 months later, he became a -1. He was the one who was always looking at, something up close, digital devices. My other son loved playing basketball. He was always outside. So what I did, because I've been going to Vision by Design and reading all these myopia management studies forever, I kind of looked at the mechanism and said, I have nothing to lose. I'm going to use my kids as experiments, right? So what I did actually was I prescribed atropine to my Plano. Well, he was like a low hyperope. I remember I'm a -650. My husband's a -5. I have a brother who's a 10, by the way, and we're all myopic, so our kids are doomed. So the 6-year-old, I put him in Ortho-K and I did atropine, and my other hyperopic kid who is Plano, I just put him on atropine for about, 7 years or so. So, they became teenagers. And like I said, teenagers don't listen, right, to what we see as parents, even though we're eye doctors. They came off of it. So now he's 17. So the kid who has no prescription, he's now 17. He miraculously has no prescription. And my other son, who is on Ortho-K, he got off the atropine about 3-4 years old. He's now 15 years old. He is still a -1. So, that speaks volumes. And that's the other reason why I was so passionate about it. I knew my kids were doomed. So I didn't want them to have eyes like mine. And that's why I also got into it. And I think, the studies, I did a combination. And I think it worked well. I did it off-label with my other son, and that worked well. But I know it's just N = 1. But the studies are starting to show more and more overall.
Well, actually, that's interesting that you said that, because there are studies out there that are showing that there's certain normative axial lengths when there isn't a prescription present yet. And if patients are trending towards that higher axial length, should you start atropine sooner? Because you wouldn't implement MiSight or Ortho-K because there's no script there yet, right? But that is an argument that could be made, is you're seeing that axial length that's outside of the norms. Looks like they could trend that way. They have the family history there, XYZ, whatever. And then you start atropine and see if you can prolong the onset of it. Something to think about. I haven't done it on anybody yet, but it's definitely been something I'm looking for now that we measure axial length regularly on all of our pediatric patients instead of just our myopes.
Yeah, we also measure axial length on all our patients too, to have a baseline.
Yeah, it's a solid idea. We started implementing that pretty recently, but it's been interesting to see what it's looking like.
So fantastic and amazing story. And I think, when you can really connect with patients on a personal level, when you're talking about yourself, I'm extremely nearsighted, and you can bring in your kids, they start to trust you, right? They believe the communication. They're going to buy in more. So I think it's key to always figure out how you can connect with that person sitting in front of you and give a real life experience of, what you've been through, but also what your kids are going through, because they're coming to you because you're the resource, you're the authority figure, you're the person that they trust. But just making that emotional connection can really take that conversation to the next level. Dr. Kazmi, Dr. Coan shared some great stories, some reflections in regards to her personal family. Do you have any stories that you would like to share, maybe reflecting over the last couple of years? Because you've been doing this myopia control and treatment for quite a bit of time, maybe not 20 years, but you've been doing it for quite a bit of time. So let's talk about
quite
maybe
a
one
bit
of
of
your
time, and then
stories.
we kind of hit the ground running at our office when my site first came out. So we're, we have some patients on year 3 now, and it's been very exciting to see. There's a few patients that we were following where they just chose not to go the orthokeratology route when we presented it to them before the initiation of my site. And once my site came out, around that time, they were progressing at, in 1 year, they progressed 1.25. The following year, they progressed by a diopter. And then they finally decided to do a treatment option. We presented it every year, but my site is what really got them excited about it. They just never bought into orthokeratology. And then he's been in my site now 2.5 years and has only progressed 0.25 since starting. And he's still 9, 10. So he's got a lot more progression ahead of him. That's possible, but it seems like the My Site's working really well. So that in itself has been really exciting. And those parents go back and they tell their, parent friends and their baseball parent friends, and it starts bringing more and more people through the doors.
Awesome. Well, look, this has been great. I mean, go ahead, Kayla. Did you have something to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to add in. So in regards to pricing, Dr. Chung had mentioned earlier how the mood kind of changes when she steps out of the room. So another thing is I'm the one who goes over pricing. She's here to give the information, and then I step in. So as soon as she walks in, or when she's walking in and she's in there, they're very sitting up and listening. And as soon as she walks out, we sit back. And I'm like, let me break it down for you. So I think that makes a big difference as well.
Do you get a lot of pushback when you present the pricing? Do you get a lot of questions of why is it so much, or what if we don't come in for the follow-up visits, anything like that?
I really don't, and it's because of all of the lead up. If I do, what I'm prepared to go into is maybe they have a certain insurance that we're able to utilize, and towards the lenses, there's rebates towards the lenses. So keeping it all positive in that direction, and I aim towards those.
Yeah, we also sell it. We say it's a treatment plan that we're doing. So it's a lot of visits that we're covering. It's unlimited for the year. So we do that. Now, if you don't have kids, it's fine. What you can also do, if you have patients in your practice who are doing myopia management, you could, what I call smart schedule them. So, we have quite a few in our practice. What I would do is like, oh, I know so-and-so is here and they've been doing ortho-K or they've been doing my site. I would literally talk to my ortho-K patient who's been doing it for 5-10 years. Hey, do you mind talking to this little kid about ortho-K? And hey, mom, is it okay you talk to the, parent about it? And they have a conversation. So that's even more powerful because they're hearing it from my patients now. It's like, oh yeah, Dr. Chung, she did this. Yeah, at first it wasn't real comfortable, to say stuff like that, but you're going to get used to it and stuff. And we've been doing great. So if you don't have kids, you can use your patients.
Patient marketing.
Exactly. And just schedule them at around the same time if they're coming in for a consultation. That's a good tip that, we would recommend.
You're taking teamwork to the next level. I mean,
it's like a whole office affair here.
I mean, that's the real deal there. Well,
but that's actually true because we'll sit patients down to do a class and someone else will walk by and see that happening, and they'll just chime in on their own sometimes too. Like, don't worry, I was there last year and you'll get through it. They start cheering each other on. So it's interesting that you said that, but it's true. I think it's the practice that you build, right? The environment that you have, it's a very giving and sharing environment. So when patients are in there, they feel like they're a family.
Yeah, the energy is right. The energy is contagious, no doubt about it. This evening we've had the opportunity to really dive deep into, how to communicate with the parents, right? And also how to communicate inside of the office. We've also had the opportunity to talk about, how do we have that conversation about my sight? What is my sight? What does this look like? The optics, technology. And we've been able to also discuss, how do we have that conversation about the fees, right? This is all high level, next level conversations that's going to really help to elevate practices for our colleagues out there. But the one thing that I think we all can do better is really create more awareness about the importance of myopia control. And I really love to just kind of end the podcast, in this live stream on, discussing how can we elevate the awareness? What can we do in our office? What can we do in our communities? What can we do in our families to really stress the importance of the need for myopia control and the need to slow it down because of all those negative things that could take place if that eye gets too myopic. So I'd love to hear, what you're doing in your communities, what you're doing in your offices to spread the word.
So one thing that you mentioned was talking to other family members and like that. So it's kind of funny because as soon as someone's pregnant and they come in, I'm like, congratulations. So when are we going to see your child? So just really bringing that in. And then we have a family recently. It was first started with one child. They then brought in like a cousin, another child. So just raising that awareness within the family is really big.
Yeah, we also do stuff with social media too, of course. On the websites, you can talk about it, podcasts, all these things too.
Yeah.
Educating other doctors about it too, because half the time you would say, well, why didn't they tell me about it? Like, what's wrong with them? So it's really important that other doctors, even though they don't want to, actually do it. For example, people in my practice. So my husband actually is not huge on myopia management. He always says, yes, you're myopic and you're progressing, so you're going to be talking to my wife, right? I mean, that's cool because he's not passionate about it. He knows I am, so I will take over. So it's really important that we refer, because we are helping that child from becoming more nearsighted and preventing ocular diseases that will happen in the future. So that's kind of how we spread in our practice too with other healthcare professionals. We actually gave a talk. Kayla and I, there was a Vietnamese community and there's a bunch of healthcare providers out there. There was chiropractors and there's primary cares and there's actually ophthalmologists. And the ophthalmologist, she brought her kids in, and the weird thing, well, I don't know if it's weird, but her son, who's now 6, is negative too. She says, wait a minute. All of a sudden, he just became myopic, and I'm like an eye surgeon, and I'm not even picking this up. So I'm doing my sight on her 2 kids now. So she reinforced to the whole healthcare community who's there, hey, this is why you need to go in and get your eyes checked. So that's another way we're spreading awareness of myopia.
Yeah. We've also made information packets and brochures and things that we've dropped off at pediatrician offices within a certain radius of our office, as well as school nurses. Back to school season is upon us. So, you can look into participating in local school vision screeners or things like that to just get your word out, not only for your practice or not only for myopia management, but also for your practice. So that's also a win. And then you touched on social media, which is huge. Social media is really the way people get information these days. So creating blogs or reels on your, practice Facebook and Instagram pages really goes a long way. And it captures a large audience, even outside of the people that are actually your patients. So.
Awesome. Well, I have you experts on this call this evening. I actually have a question for you before we close out. You mentioned healthcare professionals, ophthalmologists, chiropractors, all these other healthcare professionals in our community, right? How are you having conversations with pediatricians? Because I feel like they can either be great or they can be horrible, right? So I'm curious to know, what is your relationship with the pediatricians in your area, and what kind of communication are you having with them to stress the importance of, what they're doing is more of a screening and that they need to come to us to do the actual eye exam. I'd love to maybe socialize that, because I feel like if we can make the perfect partnership, that is the partnership that we need to look for. that and school nurses, right? Because that's going to help get a lot of people in our offices, but also help a lot of kids down the road as well. So what does that conversation and that partnership look like?
So Dr. Kazmi, I don't know if you've ever visited a pediatrician, but I did over a decade ago. And when I first did it, was just ortho-K. We didn't have MySight at the time. They were actually really against it. But you know who was even more important were actually the nurses. So the front desk people, the nurses, they're the ones who are actually referring some of the patients here. So we have a pediatrician across the street. The nurse actually hands out a ton of business cards and say, hey, you need to go get your eyes checked. So, and they get busy too. And honestly, we didn't get really good feedback from them, but you know, the nurses and the front desk people were actually better sources of referral.
Yeah, you're correct. The MD community is a little bit more adverse to orthokeratology. And we actually have a really good partnership with an ophthalmologist office nearby us, a pediatric ophthalmology office, and they refer patients over to us for myopia management. So I think they've definitely embraced it a lot more since MySight, or the inception of MySight. They do a lot of atropine already in their office. So it's only when they're ready to add a second tier or transition a patient off of atropine because they're age appropriate now for MySight that they'll send them over. But they're really big advocates of it now. I will say that that was not the case when orthokeratology was the only option. And I think that adversity is still there. So I guess being mindful of where your patients are being referred to you from is really good when you're talking about options. But I guess in our area, we've just really lucked out. We have a pediatrician office nearby that has an autorefractor. And so she'll send us the patient with a printout of their autorefractor. It's a handheld. So I guess it's not an autorefractor, it's a handheld auto. But it's still, yeah, it does the job. It a lot of times overestimates the SIL, but anytime it flags it, she's sending them over. And so it's been really beautiful and nice for us. And we have a good relationship. So I would say don't give up, keep trying. And there's a lot of offices. So maybe one office wasn't a success. Just try the next one, especially if you're first getting started and you want to try to find patients from wherever you can.
Well, thank you so much. This has been a fantastic interview, fantastic panel, a group of experts. Clearly, everyone on this call is very passionate about myopia. Just to see a technician, Kayla, to see your energy, to see your love, to see your passion, to me, it touches me, right? Because we are only as strong as our team, right? If my technician is not doing their job, if my optical is not doing their job, if my front desk is not doing their job, then we're not going to do that patient any kind of service or not give them the justice that they need. And we're not going to be able to give them the best tools to be successful with their eyes. So I just want to say thank you to everyone on this call. Thank you to all my colleagues out there that are practicing myopia control. And for those that want to learn more, go to successcenter.coopervision.com and learn more. Go to their MySight YouTube page and learn more. Follow these rock stars on this podcast, Dr. Kazmi, Dr. Coan, Kayla Allen. Follow these experts here, and you can learn so much more. But thank you so much for hanging out with us this evening. It's your favorite optometrist, Dr. Darryl Glover. Stay healthy, stay positive, stay blessed, and until next time, peace. All right, colleagues, and it's a wrap. Thank you dearly for hanging out with the Defocus Media team. We hope truly something resonated with you. And if it did, be sure to give us 5 stars and make sure you follow us on all social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, you named it. And our handle is at Defocus Media on all platforms. And until next time,